Hello, everyone. I'm Catherine Spitz-Cohan, Executive Director of Film Pittsburgh. Welcome to our JFilm Festival interview with Barry Avrich, who is the director of Howie Mandel, but enough about me. And I'm thrilled to talk to you, Barry. I love your film, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about you, but not enough about you. So tell us a little bit about where you grew up and how you got into filmmaking.
Well, thank you. Happy to be here. And I wish I was there with you in Pittsburgh. One of the toughest part in being a prolific documentary filmmaker, and by that I mean more than one film a year, is missing these film festivals. I love an audience. I love Jewish film festivals. I find that when I go to Jewish film festivals all over the United States, there's the longest introductions, more talking than movie showing. I find it. Here's some rules. Here's some sponsors we want to thank. By the way, there's the bathroom. And if you want to eat something outside quietly. Don't forget to get your parking validated. And we also want to thank the Blechmans who have given us a gift and a donation. And then 92 people have left because they're come to see a film. So I'm always happy to do a Jewish film festival. But I of course, miss being there, as I said. I was born and raised in Montreal, Canada, in a house filled with culture. Nobody in the entertainment industry, but loads of comedy albums and jazz albums. And they weren't, my parents didn't necessarily say, listen to them, but they were there. And so I did. But they did make sure that I saw and experienced a lot of great entertainment, whether Pearl Bailey was coming to, a theater in Montreal, or whether it was a great piece of theater. We went to everything. We went to, New York in the fall to see Broadway, even though we didn't really have any money. I remember the first Broadway show I saw was A Chorus Line, and my father got 4 orchestra seats for $100 and told us for the entire bus ride, God help me, from Montreal to New York about how much money that was and how much money that these tickets cost, $25 a ticket. And we went to the Stratford Festival in Ontario every summer and saw great Shakespeare. So lucky to have a childhood immersed in culture and storytelling, which I learned from these comedy albums. And so it was a natural progression to documentary filmmaking where I could tell stories and control the process, unlike scripted films and those kind of films where, there's lots more money involved and bigger budgets, but you're beholden as a director to so many people. Though documentaries have allowed me to sort of control the process and selfishly tell stories about people that interest me.
Well, we appreciate that because our interests seem to be your interests, at least mine. Can you talk a little bit about how you came to be a filmmaker? Do you really attribute it to that upbringing with your family?
I don't know when it started, but I gravitated towards the entertainment industry very early. I was reading Hollywood trade magazines like Variety at the age of 8 or 9, and I would go to a Friday night dinner and bring up box office grosses. Nobody knew what I was talking about, but I was interested. I don't know why, but I gravitated towards it. I was producing talent shows in high school and making short films whenever I could. People were hiring me to, I haven't really talked about this part, but hiring me to do wedding and bar mitzvah videos in the 70s, and quite horrified with the results because I would cut out parts that I didn't think were interesting to me. And so like the rabbi of our synagogue hired me to do a wedding video for his firstborn daughter and said, well, where is the entire ceremony? Too long. You spoke forever. I shortened it down. And, I think the entire video was 28 minutes and he was expecting, 6 hours. And so, that was really sort of the beginning. And then, I moved to Toronto and started making short films. I made I had an idea for a very black humored film about the theater business. And I had written to M. Emmett Walsh, a great character actor who was in the movie Blood Simple and for the Coen brothers, and Richard Kind, who was on Mad About You at the time, and said, look, I got an idea for a short film. Would you come to Toronto and be in this film for 2 days? And they said, yeah. So I've been lucky that way. And so it's been one documentary after another. And I do other things. I produce live television shows, award shows, and I've produced about 16 Shakespeare, very large, some of them have played in Pittsburgh, large stage to screen adaptations of Shakespeare, with a couple of them with Christopher Plummer, who was a friend who just passed away, The Tempest, and Caesar and Cleopatra, which isn't Shakespeare. But so I didn't really have a formal education in it, but would just pick up a camera and shoot.
Well, I want you to talk for a second before we get into Howie Mandel. I want you to talk for a second just about your experience with film festivals. We at Film Pittsburgh we do 4 film festivals, this Jewish Film Festival, and we also do a shorts festival. And I love shorts. And if we could just talk a little bit about that. Do you still work at all in shorts, or have you graduated to feature length and never going back?
Well, the thing about the short film, and I should send you a few of them, which really have not had a lot of exposure in your country. Some short films that I do. I was good friends with a gentleman who passed away by the name of Saul Bass. Some of your audience would know him. He was a legendary poster designer and trailer producer who worked for Hitchcock and Spielberg and Preminger and everybody doing posters. Legendary, everything. Man with the Golden Arm, Psycho, everything. And at one point, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences was going to eliminate the short film as a category. And Saul went to them and said, well, if you eliminate the short film, then you may as well eliminate the poem from literature, because, a short film, in fact, is harder to make than a feature-length film. So I made a lot of short films. I occasionally will make a short film because, I like the expression of it. I did a short film a couple of years ago called The Man Who Shot Hollywood, about an American unknown photographer named Jack Pashkovsky, who took pictures of celebrities behind the scenes in Hollywood in the 30s. Beautiful little movie. I produced, I didn't direct, I produced another one that might have played your festival called On My Way Out, about a 90-year-old Holocaust survivor who has to tell his family that he's gay.
I just heard of that film, yeah.
And that's quite a beauty. And then another one, this film that you guys should see called The Madness of Method. This is this sort of black and white dark film about acting with M. Emmett Walsh. Has won some festivals in Europe. I don't know if I don't think it's ever been seen in the United States. Beautiful movie. So I do like working in the short medium occasionally.
Yeah, I think it's and especially now, just not only because of COVID, but just our minds are with TikTok and YouTube and videos. So our brains are so wrapped around the short, whether it's a headline that instead of reading the whole article, you'll just scroll down and read the headlines. I think our brain is really, it's a right medium for where our brains are.
Look, I came from the world of advertising where, you worked in lengths of 30 seconds and 60 seconds. And so you had to get that message across. And so a short film is, can be anywhere from 2 minutes to, in some cases, 40 minutes. And you have to really make sure that, you get those 3 acts in and get the powerful emotive message of it. It is way tougher. So I do enjoy the challenge.
So how did you and Howie are both from Canada? Yeah. Did you know each other prior to making the movie?
Well, briefly, I had just finished doing our version of the Academy Awards, producing the show. And working with Norm Macdonald, another Canadian, as the host. And Norm and I sort of brainstormed ideas for who can host next year, other than himself. He wanted to host again. I said, well, we generally look for a different host. And so, we arrived at Howie because Howie had been doing so well in hosting, and I loved him and had seen him certainly perform, but I didn't know him. And so I flew down to Los Angeles to ask him and to kick around the idea. And fell in love immediately with each other in terms of a sense of family. And he couldn't believe he didn't know me. I couldn't believe I hadn't worked with him before. And before we got rolling as in doing the Canadian Screen Awards, which is what they're called, he asked me to get involved with that short film I described, On My Way Out. He knew the kid that was making it, director, very, very, very unexperienced. a mess of footage and asked me to sort of take it over and see if a film could be made out of it. And then, we just kept finding ways to stay in each other's lives. And I did some research and found out that a documentary had never been done on Howie, which to me was amazing. I've seen 1 billion documentaries on comedians, and it's generally the same trajectory. And I wanted to do something that showed another side of Howie. Everybody knows the germaphobe, but there's so much more depth there. And so I approached him and said, look, are you open to this? And he said, yes. And again, primarily A, because he trusted me, and B, he doesn't want to stop working. He has to keep going 100 miles an hour. And so he said, let's do it. And so that's it. We got it done and filmed, during COVID. Wasn't easy, but got it made.
Well, I really was impressed by the candidness of the film, his talking about things that a lot of people won't talk about. And it gave me an appreciation for him as a person. And I thank you for that. Did you talk about, the film and did you know that those things were going to come out?
I mean, some of it, yes. I mean, you don't go in blind, but I don't, I don't really work with notes. My process in making a documentary is to be extraordinarily well researched. And so I don't like getting questions in advance of interviews, and I don't like giving them to people in advance. Often people will say, oh, can you send me the questions in advance? And I'll send them a list of questions I've made up that I don't want to use. But so he didn't know what I was going to ask. And I had a sense of where I wanted to go with it. But, I've got another film on Netflix now called Off the Record, based on, on David Foster, the Grammy Award-winning music producer. And like Howie, he appreciated the rules going into the process. They know I've done this, 3 or 4 dozen times. And so they were trusting, and they know the rules in terms of it being no holds barred. You got to be honest. And how there wasn't anything Howie really didn't want to talk about.
Yeah, well, that was, to me, it gave me a side of him that if you'd only heard about him from, his early days as a comedian, or you'd only heard about him from, the show that he's doing now, America's Got Talent, then you wouldn't know all of this. And I also really appreciated that you included his family, because I think that his wife was such a major supporter of who, you just don't get to see that often. So thank you for that.
Well, you can't tell, thank you. You can't tell Howie Mandel's story without family, because, you appreciate the relationship that he has with his mother, that he had with his father, that he has with his wife and his kids and his grandchildren. It's all about family for him, where so many of these documentaries on comedians, whether it's Jerry Seinfeld or, whomever, they're just not going to, the family doesn't want to be in it. They don't want to include it. And I just don't think you can tell Howie, and that's fine, but you just can't tell Howie's story without this mensch side of him.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk to you a little bit now about, obviously you have another documentary coming out now, the one about the art world.
Yeah.
And I just, when I think about curation and the films that we make or that we curate and show here in Pittsburgh, it's to be honest with you, it's a little bit harder to curate as many documentaries as I'd like to, because features are more popular, and that's a shame to me. But it is the truth. And I want to ask you about the types of documentaries that appeal to you, and why you choose to make a film. In other words, you described how you got to know Howie, and that it just made sense to you because nobody had ever made a documentary about him. But in general, when you're thinking about topics, and I understand that you're probably thinking about these things all the time, you're a curious person. So how do you determine like, yeah, this is a topic that I'm going to go for, because it's so much work. You donate, you spend so much time working in
Well,
on
look,
one film.
I don't believe that scripted features are more popular than documentaries in the film festival platform anymore. I don't believe that. I think it's up to the film festival to find out the right mix. As somebody that runs my own film festival every couple of years and deals with an audience, generally an older audience, that was always the feeling previously that, documentaries, people want to see more features. And I've now changed the balance dramatically, because I think it comes down to the mix. I think people want a good story. Would you rather watch a good story in a documentary or a feature that has stars in it that's crap? And I have found that, the audience has moved away from that, saying, gee, not enough features, not enough stars, because most of the stuff isn't very good. So, and how much time am I going to invest in that? I mean, this is the golden era of documentaries. It's the only thing people are really talking about, other than scripted limited series on Netflix or Amazon. And if you think about a scripted series in 5 or 6 parts, they're mini documentaries quite often. So, I do believe that. I think with reference to my process, the alchemy of the decision making is a blend of what's commercial to begin with. I'm not interested in making a film about the gestation period of the Canadian beaver or the migratory patterns of an American eagle. Should be done.
But not by you.
No. I mean, I'm just never going to be the guy that does the oil spill in Bhopal. However, in over 30 documentaries, my range has been from Hollywood to history to art. I just finished 2 documentaries, one that looks at the controversial politics within the country of Turkey, another one that looks at terrorism or Iran as a terrorism proxy. And I'm working on another one right now that is a trilogy, part of a trilogy of that. So, it's always, again, the process of documentary filmmaking is ideas that interest me, but at the same time, I understand what's commercial and what's not. I have a call with a network after this that and they like me because I'm really happy with a no. And I move on. I'm not going to be that guy that's going to spend 10 years trying to make a film. 10 years in the making. 10 years in the making. Oh my God, he spent his life making that film. That'll never be me. I won't even wait, before COVID, I won't even wait for a table at a restaurant. So I'm not going to work, for 14 years to make a film about a ball of yarn. So I'm happy. My point is, I'm happy with yes or no. And ultimately, I understand what's commercial. I get emails. The new film, Made You Look, which is about the largest art fraud in the history of the US, on Netflix now. I've received hundreds of emails, more than I've ever gotten on any film, with ideas that people have for fake art they've bought, an artist they want to profile. And I do respond to everybody. Because that's just, I've been taught to do that. And I ask people to, that question is, how important do you think the story is beyond you? I understand it's personal, but is it commercial? Is it not commercial? And so we start there. And then I will develop it, and pitch it. But as I said, if I don't get an uptake on it, I rarely make a film and hope that it sells. I generally have an idea that there's a market for it. I am working on one right now about a con artist who is a real sort of talented Mr. Ripley type. And I haven't attempted to pre-sell it, but I'm making that slowly. And maybe it'll find an audience, maybe it won't, but most likely will.
So can you tell me a little bit about the film festival that you run every couple years? I'm really curious about that.
I do. Yeah. I mean, the film festival I run every couple of years is called the Floating Film Festival. It takes place on a boat. It's primarily invitation only because we're only 100 people, and I don't want it to be more than that. We go out on
Dusty Cole.
That's correct.
Okay.
So Dusty started it. Dusty was really my second father. He started it. I took it over after about, I'd say, we've done about, there's the Canadian. We've done about 15 of them, and Dusty did the first 5 or 6, and I took it over. And of course, we missed it this past January because of what's gone on, and hopefully I'll go out again. But I've really learned, originally when Dusty ran it, he let Roger Ebert and Richard Corliss, may they both rest in peace, pick the films that were important to them versus the audience. Mm-hmm. And I just didn't feel that was the way to run a festival.
Mm-hmm. So how did you pick them?
I picked them based on the demographics of my audience, based on the algorithms of what I think they'd like on a certain day and a certain time of the day. If we were going to dinner, I wasn't showing them, a revolting, difficult subject matter. If we were waking up early, what should I program and what day part works? And also what kind of stories do they want to hear and see? Mm-hmm. Roger and Richard and some others that were guest programmers felt that an audience needed to be pushed and provoked. And my feeling was they're on holiday on a boat. They paid a lot of money. And I don't know that they want to watch a film about, the persecution of somebody in Kazakhstan and the mutilation. I mean, it's not that I didn't show those films. I did occasionally on that end of it. But there needed to be a balance of people walking out and saying they had a good time. And it used to drive Dusty crazy because when I took it over and he was still joining me when he was alive, he'd go, what do you, I'd say, people are coming out, they didn't like the film. Oh my God. He'd go, what do you care? Where are they going? And you didn't make the film. And I cared whether I made the film or not. I wanted people at the end of their journey to say, wow, thank you so much. I remember having one guy come up to me, a famous person, without mentioning his name. I think he started a company called Home Depot, complaining to me about the films and like, I'm not seeing enough Hollywood films. Why didn't you bring on Iron Man or something? Or why aren't you showing this? And it's like, then stay home. I mean, I'm not necessarily showing, Hollywood films, but, I was showing The Imitation Game and, and unusual art films and smaller indie films and lots of documentaries and some foreign films too. And I would invite, special guests to present their films, writers, directors. We've had, since I started doing it, we've had Dick Cavett, Jenna Rollins,
wow,
tons of fabulous people come on and present their favorite movie as well as do Q&As and masterclasses.
Wow, that's phenomenal.
It's a little crazy, but because you're.
How do you get on the invitation list?
Just send me a note. But it's not for everybody because again, you're on a ship. Forget about COVID. We'll get past that and figure out a safe way to travel again. But you're on a boat. These are generally serious moviegoers. They don't want talking. Anybody that shows up in the theater late or noisy, they're immediately ostracized because again, you got mostly a group of 100 Jews who want to watch a movie and talk about it after. And so you're even though I'm running the film festival, you're approached constantly on deck and walking around the ship with comments on the film or help their grandson who's looking to get into the film business or when is shuffleboard starting to, how do I book an excursion to see a turtle, or I need a Band-Aid.
Right. Exactly.
So I generally hide.
Exactly. Well, just for our audience, Dusty Cole, for those of you that might not know, was one of the co-founders of the Toronto International Film Festival. So I'm so glad that you're continuing on that tradition. Obviously, I'm a big fan of film festivals, and even though they're everywhere, I think that, still there's a lot of people in Pittsburgh that don't know about our film festivals. And I think that they're so important, especially in this day and age. because independent film is so good. It's just really.
Well, here's the headline that, during what I've learned during this year and a half or so is that, you cannot isolate your imagination. And so film festivals have been the only way out. And the fact that film festivals have sort of found their way to gravitate virtually, thank God. I mean, how much can you watch on every other streamer? When I had Made You Look end of April, last of May of 2020, which was a big, expensive art documentary that was going to have its world premiere at Hot Docs, they came to me and said, look, we're going online. And I wasn't happy about it, but what can I do on that end of it? And it was really a pilot project because I think, by April last year, probably one of the first festivals out of the gate. And I had to take a chance and do it. And it was fine. And since then, I've, between Made You Look and playing in lots of film festivals, and Howie playing at, I think, every Jewish film festival ever created, it's been the way to go. But these kinds of Q&As and engaging an audience and letting them escape like a good book through a film festival, which has been your role to make sure that people, still get their film craving satiated. Thank God.
Yeah. And thank God for you. So thank you for joining us today. No, I'm really appreciative. It's been so wonderful to speak to you. And I just am such a fan of your work. And
Thank you.
had a really just great time speaking with you today. To our Film Pittsburgh audience, thank you so much for tuning in. And I will see you again next time.